and I'm delighted to see you all at our newest webinar. We are continuing the topic of PCI compliance because a couple of weeks ago, when we had our webinar on PCI compliance, you had lots of questions. Many of them concerned quarterly scans. So we decided to invite an expert in scans and in automating other requirements of PCI, to tell you a little bit about what this requirement is about, what do you need to exactly, and how can you perform it, and how much does it cost. So I'm very happy to meet and greet Mr. Andrzej Kleśnicki from QUALYS. I've read his bio, and I have to say he's an expert. Andrzej, you say you have like 8 years of experience, am I right?
Yeah, that's true. I'm working security. Actually, right now it should be more than 9 years.
Oh, great. So, no better person to ask, right? So, as usual, we will start with a short presentation given by Andrzej, and then at the end, you will have a chance to ask questions. So, stay tuned. Last thing before we start, I would like to check the connection. If you hear me, can you type something in the chat box? For example, what's the weather like where you are? Oh, rainy and sunny. Okay, so, okay. Let's not waste more time and let's start our presentation first.
Okay, thank you, Pat, for this introduction. Actually, experience about vulnerability scanning, the most of the experience about vulnerability scanning I gathered over the last 4 years while working QUALYS. QUALYS is a proof scanning vendor, and what it means I will tell you in the next couple of minutes. So, first, let's speak about PCI DSS. Those of you who attended the webinar with Greg Wojciechowski done by PayLane a couple of weeks ago probably have already quite deep understanding about PCI DSS rules. But for those who didn't have opportunity, actually it's on YouTube, so you can check it by yourself. But just short intro about PCI DSS. So the payment card industry data security standard, because this is what PCI DSS stands for, is proprietary information security standard for organizations that handle credit card data for the major cards schemes like Visa, MasterCards, and American Express and others. The PCI standard is mandated by the card brand and administered by the Payment Card Industry Standard Council. So the standard was created to increase controls around cardholder data to reduce the credit card fraud. This was a wiki page definition. What it means actually is that every company that wants to deal with credit card data needs to comply to the set of 12 rules, which are in PCI DSS standard. So what are those rules? I would again just really briefly go through all the 12 requirements because then during the webinar we're going back to them. So just you have the general overview. So requirement number 1: install and maintain firewall configuration to protect cardholder data. Requirement number 2 is not to use vendor supply defaults for system passwords and other security parameters. Requirement number 3 is to protect stored cardholder data. Requirement number 4 is to encrypt cardholder data in transmission across open and public networks. Requirement number 5 is to protect all systems against malware and regularly update antivirus software. The requirement number 6 is to develop and maintain secure system and application. Requirement number 7, restrict access to cardholder data by business needs to know. Requirement number 8 is to identify and authenticate access to system components. Requirement number 9 is to restrict physical access to cardholder. Requirement number 10 is to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. 11, regularly test security systems and processes. And 12, to maintain a policy that addresses information security for all personnel. Well, that was long. So we will right now focus at one requirement, particular like requirement 11.2.2, But before that, I need to stress again that all those 12 requirements apply to all merchants who deal with credit card data. And no matter if you are big or small, if you are big, you need to pass the certification. If you are small, then you just need to do self-assessment. But still, you need to be compliant with those. So what is requirement 11.2.2? So to go to specifically to this one, it's to perform quarterly external vulnerability scans by approved scanning vendor, ASV, approved by the Payment Card Industry Security Standard Council, performed, rescanned as needed until passing scans are achieved. So this requirement means that there is a vendor organization which is approved by Payment Card Industry Council to perform vulnerability scans for you. And there are multiple rules that companies like this needs to comply before can be branded, can show the ASV status. So the list of the currently approved scanning vendor you can find on PCI pages, and QUALYS, of course, is one of them. We are one of the major ASV scans provider. So what actually ASV scan mean? As a first step, you need to know your PCI DSS scope, and in your PCI DSS scope, part of your assets probably are public facing. So those are like firewalls or your applications, maybe mail servers if you use mail server to exchange information about card data or it's not separated. So whatever is in your public network needs to be scanned in this requirement. So the first point is to know your scope. Then you use ASV scanning tool to check if this is all what is in the scope and to perform the vulnerability scan. The vulnerability scan is automated scan to detect all running ports, and actually by the PCI DSS we need to go through all the possible ports, go one by one, and check whether those ports are open, to enumerate the services on those ports, and then look for known vulnerabilities on those. What is also important here that PCI has defined a methodology how the scan should be performed. So there are a few requirements. One of those is that there should not be any interference between us, scanner, and the target. So any firewalls, web application firewalls, IPS, anything that modify the traffic, not just pass it, is considered as interference. And those should actually not block us to perform the scan. So for the time of the scan, those devices needs to temporarily allow the traffic from approved scanning vendor. If this will not happen, approved scanning vendor will detect that there is interference with the scan and will report it as in compliance. The other thing that approved scanning vendors take care of is trying to detect either the application or the service is behind load balancer, because it's a responsibility of you to make sure that the services behind the load balancer are configured in the same way. Because when we're doing the scan, we are in most cases just targeting the one of the assets, where the other probably is, if it's in passive mode, can have different configuration. So actually I can just really quickly show you a demo and show you how you can use QUALYS to perform the scan, and show that it's quite easy process. Just give me a second. I will try to show my screen. So you should see right now QUALYS PCI interface. This is actually the home screen. So for any merchant to run ASV scan against his asset, the procedure is quite simple. You can just click Asset Wizard, where as a first step, you're providing the list of IPs that you would like to scan. Again, those are all devices that are public-facing. So we will be using our scanner, which is in public networks, in internet. So you don't need to install anything in your environment. You just provide us with IP. Then you're providing us with the domains, fully qualified domain names for virtual servers, for web servers that we will scan as well. We'll discover the assets there. I'm not doing this at this stage. Then, as said, you are supposed to tell us either the asset is behind the load balancer. So if you select no, then we'll continue with the scan. If you will select yes, then you need to confirm that the configuration is synchronized. And if not, you will get a reminder that it's your responsibility to make sure that the configuration is the same. And then you can just finish. And in the next step, start the scan. Right? So you just provide the title of the scan. You select the bandwidth, so how fast the scan should happen, depending on your network performance. So you are providing IPs, or you're just selecting all IPs that you configured, and you run the scan. As a result of the scan, so our accounts are not running right now. I did it just before the webinar. So I have the scan completed here. So I will right now open it. And this scan resulted in quite amount of vulnerabilities. So what PCI DSS says is that the scan will be considered as valid if there will be no level high and critical vulnerabilities. In terms of CVSS, this means that no vulnerability with CVSS scoring less than, higher than 4 is allowed. So if we actually review those, so I'm just right now clicking on one of the vulnerability. And this one is actually scoring CVSS base is level 5, right? So it's higher than 5, so that's why I cannot have this vulnerability in my environment. I have here the description of the threat. I have here the description of the impact, what to do not to be vulnerable, and the results. And this is like all the assets, all the servers that we scan, we are providing you with this information. There are multiple ways of filtering this, but the main goal is to make sure that no of those will be detected. So let me go back to the presentation. So how often you should do that kind of scan? By PCI guidelines, this scan should be done at least quarterly with the passing results. Passing results are set no vulnerabilities, CVSS 4 and higher. Additionally, the whole ASV scanning process has quite well-defined methodology, so there are guidelines for the vendors like us how to perform those scans, and there is quite detailed process how to handle disputes. So even though QUALYS engine is a leading engine in vulnerability scanning, we are on the market for 17 years. It's happening. It can happen that we'll have something which is called false positive. It means that we will detect something which is not there. And there could be multiple reasons why this happened. There could be some issues with the network scan. There could be some new information about the vulnerabilities that we didn't update it, or there's something can be interfering with the scan. So PCI DSS, being aware of those situations, defined the process of handling disputes. So we give you online interface, and actually most of the vendors will give you, proof scanning vendors needs to give you some way of submit those false positives. And the process is reviewed by man, who's reviewing the evidence, who's looking at the detection, and then making the decision either this is false positive or not. If it's false positive, then this vulnerability is approved. It's no longer valid for you. And as a last step of this process, every quarter, a proof scanning vendor will issue you attestation report that can be used as a proof of being compliant with the PCI DSS requirement. So there is a lot of questions and a lot of confusions about the difference between vulnerability scanning as defined in point 11.2 and the requirement of PCI DSS for penetration testing. So I just thought to avoid the questions in the end of the webinar, and I will try to address it now. So as said, requirement 11.3 of PCI DSS is stating that additionally you should perform penetration testing. And as penetration testing has similar idea in mind to find the vulnerabilities inside your environment, the whole process is a little bit different. So vulnerability scanning can be the first step and usually is the first step to penetration testing. But as opposite to ASV scanning, which has well-defined methodology how it should be done, penetration testing is done according to the methodology of the pen tester who will hire to do the job. It's performed manually as ASV scans are done automatically, and it's using multiple data sources. So it's not just one engine that performs the data, but pen testing use whatever he needs during the process to get the results. So just imagine that if penetration tester will be at the stage of finding the vulnerabilities in web application, he will use the scanner to find those, and then if he will discover some weak holes, he will move it forward by using, for example, open source tools like SQL to find SQL vulnerabilities inside. Penetration testing can also be done using black box techniques or white box techniques. It means that with information about the attacking target or without those information. Also, penetration testing usually is focusing on the chain of attack. So it's not only about finding one vulnerability and one weak spot, but to find multiple weak spots that can be associated together to get the access to the card holder data. And another important thing about penetration testing is that during the pen testing process, according to PCI DSS, pen tester should exploit the vulnerabilities, should verify the vulnerabilities. As in opposite, approved scanning vendors never do that. So as we are performing automated tools, our primary goal in mind is, besides of course detecting the vulnerabilities, is not to crash your servers. So we are not doing any denial of service, we're not doing any buffer overflow exploits, we're not doing anything to jeopardize your business. And the last thing, opposite to ASV scanning, which needs to happen quarterly, penetration testing should happen at least once a year. So to put another perspective on that, vulnerability scanning service, either by approved scanning vendor or by whatever other solution on the market, should find new vulnerabilities like Heartbleed, shell shock, or recent STRUTS2 vulnerability. Those are things that are detected using signatures, and you can do this in an automated way on large scale. When penetration testing will find you the chain of multiple actions that will lead to access your data internally, or credit card data. So it's not only about finding this one vulnerability that needs to be patched, but about the whole process. So now I will give you a few hints from my experience what you can do with ASV scanning to be easier for you to get more repeatable, more seamless results. QUALYS is a tool that provides you this, the ASV scanning in a particular way. And one of the things which differentiate us from other market vendors is that we are fully cloud-based solutions. So this means that we are delivering to you software as a service where you don't need to worry about anything. Everything is self-updated, self-maintained. No matter if you will use QUALYS for ASV scanning for any other service, everything we will do for you. You will just get the pure service that you need. So that's definitely minimize your cost on your side, right? Because you don't need to maintain anything. The second thing is, if you think about ASV scanning, usually people are looking at the requirement and they see this quarterly, what means that at least once a quarter they need to scan, and they're looking for the solution which will do that, which will scan them once a quarter. And as it fulfills the requirement of PCI DSS, not always it's the best approach. Actually, in most cases, it's not not good approach at all, because vulnerabilities are added to your environment all the time. So actually, they're not added to your environment, but they're discovered by the researchers all the time. So then you need to, and when you scan, you will get this information when the scan will finish. So if you're scanning once a quarter, you will get this information once a quarter. And this leaves a small window to fix them. With solution like QUALYS, when you can scan your infrastructure continuously, it means that we can deliver you the data actually every couple of hours, every hour, or every day, every week. You will get, as soon as the vulnerability is there, you will get this information. So this gives you plenty of time to properly prioritize it and to prepare for quarterly scan and to fix it. So we are not charging for scans, we are just charging for the assets to be protected. And the next hint is to fix vulnerabilities continuously. So even though that you should wait, that usually customers are waiting for the quarter until they do the scan and they fix the vulnerabilities, actually there's a reason why those vulnerabilities should be patched. Right? The reason is to give you better security. So knowing them faster also helps you to fix them faster. Another thing which you should look in the ASV scanning tool is a solution that will do most of the job for you. And by job, I mean like scanning itself. So why you should need to log in to the platform every quarter to do the scan. Maybe you can do the schedule. Maybe you can do the schedule to scan weekly and just send you the data. So reporting should also be automated. Actually, QUALYS can give you reporting to the degree that the right people will get exactly the right information. So just imagine that you have a server with a database, a web server with a database. So the web server administrator will get the information about Apache, PHP, and other components of the web server. And in the same time, database administrator will have information about vulnerabilities just for his database. Right? So QUALYS can do that. And of course, the best practice is to fix also in more automated way. So QUALYS cannot help you with that yet, but I will get back to this topic later on. And another thing, what you would like to find in ASV solution is to have integrated online dispute process. So remember when I told you about those false positives. In QUALYS, when I was showing you vulnerabilities, there was a button that I didn't show you back then, but you just click there, and then you are presented with all aggregated information about this vulnerability and a field for your comment, where you will place the comment, you will submit it, and then once it will be reviewed, you will get information back. So QUALYS maintains all the evidence about all those vulnerabilities. The next thing, all the ASV scans should be stored for 2 years. So also, when looking at ASV scanning solution, keep in mind that ASV should let you store this evidence for the time as long as all the history, what happened in the meantime. So, as I mentioned multiple times, QUALYS is one of the approved scanning vendor with quite big share in the market. But actually, our platform is a suite of different services that support different needs. So I will stop speaking about ASV scanning right now, and I will move to other functionalities that we have. But before that, just one marketing slide to give you understanding about our global reach. So QUALYS is proudly used in majority of the financial sector, like banks. And the beauty of our architecture, as I said, is a software as a service. It means that exactly the same quality, the same market-leading engine that we are delivering to companies like Cisco, BP, GM, we can give you the same engine starting one IP, one asset, and it's exactly the same grade of service. Now, moving more precise to other services and solutions, what we do. So let's first discuss how we collecting the data. So for ASV scanning, we are using our hardware internet-facing scanners. So those are the scanners which are maintained by us in public network to perform the scans. But we have also other ways of collecting the data for different purposes, inside our platform. So we can also give the hardware appliance to our customers, but right now, majority of the customers actually are using virtual appliance. So we can give the virtual appliance for different hypervisor development. We can also integrate with the cloud providers, either by giving special appliance for them or by integrating with the API. And here's important thing that if your part of your infrastructure is in Amazon AWS, QUALYS has agreement with AWS. We have special workflow, we have special connector to the services that AWS allows us to scan your infrastructure whenever you want, in opposite to other solutions when you need to comply with the process of penetration testing or scanning, when you need to fill the form and ask them for permission. So another benefit here. As another way of detecting or collecting data, we can use agents. So I will tell about agents a little bit later on. It's right now, let me just tell you that if you think about broader vulnerability management and you think about ensuring compliance, not only of your PCI scope, but also about your endpoints, where majority of the attacks actually right now is happening through the laptops, through the endpoints that travel outside your organization, connecting different viruses and so on. So agent is the perfect way of getting the view of this asset whenever the asset will go. Then we can also have API and other methods. But let's right now go more to the services that we can use. So using all those mechanisms, we collect the data that we can use for vulnerability management. So not only PCI scanning, not only ASV scanning that I told you earlier, but to get the broader idea about the vulnerabilities outside PCI scope, get deeper inside PCI scope, get better visibility into the endpoints. Another part of our services is making sure that your configuration is designed in a secure way. Again, on your laptops, on your servers, in your client environment. Another service that we have, we are using we're a web application scanner that can scan your application for cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and other OWASP vulnerabilities. And working together with that, we have web application firewall solution that can seamlessly stop the traffic between the attacker and the web application based on web application scanning results. So when we see that there is attack for the vulnerability which is unknown or vulnerability previously detected, we can stop it before getting into the server. And we have few products that we will be releasing this year. So one is IOC, which is indicators of compromise. We'll be able to detect different kinds of IOC, like file hashes or network connections across your whole environment. We'll have theme, which is file integrity monitoring. I will tell you a little bit about that later today. And we also, by the end of the year, planning to give the first look at our remediation platform. So remember when I was saying that you should look for the solution that not only scan, report, but also that fix the vulnerabilities? We're going to that direction. So we're looking for the way of applying the patches to your systems. And on top of that, we have something which we call Asset View. It's a platform that gives 2 seconds visibility across the million of IT assets. And of course, your organization can be much smaller than millions, but still it's the same platform. The best thing about Asset View is that it's free. It's not paid service. So no matter of your size, you can request it for QUALYS, and you can use our cloud agent to collect the data from your servers, from your assets. So if you're from laptops, so if somebody will be working from Starbucks or from Kuala Lumpur, we'll still monitor the asset. It will know exactly who is using the computer, what are the services, what is the software installed. And again, it's free. So this was like a little bit about the QUALYS, and now let's go back to PCI DSS, because I did this background to speak about other requirements. And first, we'll go to requirement 11.2. So you remember 11.2.2 is a requirement to do the vulnerability scan for external using approved scanning vendor. But actually, the requirement 11.2 is a little bit broader because it's also about running internal scan, at least quarterly. And for internal scans, PCI DSS doesn't force you to use approved scanning vendor. Still, I see no reason for you not to go with the solution which is proven to be working and the solution which is approved to scan your external network, to scan your internal infrastructure. But there is no strict requirements for that. Actually, if you look at the requirement, you have much more flexibility in how you will scan your internal network. And following literally PCI DSS, it's one thing. But if we start to think about security, and actually PCI DSS, it's a set of rules to make you more secure. And as every standard, not always is adjusted exactly to your organization, not always is adjusted to exactly to your threats. So if you go from security perspective, if you really want to make your organization more secure, more resistant to attack, you can have other ideas how to write the information about the vulnerabilities and how to work with them. So the first thing is about the visibility. Using other methods of detections, like for example, authenticated scan. So I'll tell you that PCI DSS ASV scan is network scan, but you can also provide the credentials and do authenticated scans. Then the solution will collect much more information. The vulnerability scanner will give you much more rich reports. So for example, if you detect vulnerabilities with Adobe Flash Player or Silverlight, which are right now the components which are most actively used by attackers. Then, as a next step, you also should think about a solution which will do something more than scanning. Because the scanning, even though it's quite hard, is just the first point of the process. Then you need to prioritize the vulnerabilities. You need to have information how to patch them. You need to have different workflows depending on different types of systems. So again, this is something that what we can do. Different detections methods for different assets should be applied. So you would like to scan a server differently than your laptop. Why? Because for most of the time, laptop has different IPs, so it's really hard to catch it and scan it as it's changing the IP over time. It's in the TCP network, it's connecting using mobile card or whatever else, right? So also when you think about vulnerability scanning, you should think about what would be the best way of collecting data from different types of assets. And the last thing, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of organizations are moving some part of infrastructure to the cloud. But also, you will never move fully to the cloud. So it will always be some sort of hybrid, because your laptop on the end of the day will not be in the cloud. It will still be your laptop. So having this hybrid infrastructure, you also need to find a solution which will give you this continuous view no matter where you are. So moving away from vulnerability scanning, I think that everything that could be said was said, and if not, I will be open to answer your question there. There are other requirements in PCI DSS that can be automated using solutions like QUALYS or using open source solution. And first, let's look at requirements 2.1 and 2.3. So those requirements are in the broader requirement 2, which is about configuring assets in the secure way, having the secure configuration, being sure that the assets don't have default passwords left them by vendors, like default Oracle password or default MySQL password, and so on. So solutions like QUALYS, as I said, one of the services that we do, we are doing configuration checks. So actually, you can create your own configuration standard when you say you don't want to see default passwords, you don't want to see that components, you would like to have system hardened, or you can use industrial standards, or maybe you would like to use PCI DSS driven standards. And QUALYS will just use data, whatever are your requirements, and do scanning on all your environment, providing you proof of compliance or recommendations how to fix them. So things, so solutions like that automate this process to the degree that you just need to react whenever something is done incorrectly. And so it's quite big relief. The next requirement that I would like to mention is requirement 2.4, which is about maintaining an inventory of system components that are in scope of PCI DSS. And of course, this can be done manually, maintaining the Excel file, but also you need to somehow make sure that you are verifying this. And as I mentioned earlier, QUALYS has something which is called Asset View, which is a solution for you to keep the track of inventory, keep a track of your assets. So this can be used also to automate the requirement 2.4. So whenever you just want to produce the evidence that you know about all your assets, you can just generate a report, and that's it. The next requirement, which is quite easy to automate using QUALYS, is requirement 6.6, which is about web applications, about making sure that there are no vulnerabilities in application. And application scanning is a little bit different than vulnerability scanning done in PCI ASV scans, and some components are the same, but in this particular requirement, you need to go further and you need to go behind, for example, authentication. So what we'll do during ASV scan, when we will detect the application, we'll start to crawl it and we'll start to collect forms and submit the vulnerabilities, submit different requests to get the response to validate the vulnerabilities. But when there will be authentication page or some more complicated workflow to complete, it's automated tool. It's not possible to pass through. So then we have the special tool for that, which is called Web Application Scanning tool, where you can precisely design a scan to bypass all of those issues and to give you better understanding of the vulnerabilities inside the application. So the next one, and it's the last one. So we're slow, maybe not so slowly, but actually fastly moving to the Q&A. So just prepare your questions or ask them in the chat window right now. So requirement 11.5 is to deploy change detection mechanism. So for example, file integrity monitoring tools. So when you remember that I said that QUALYS is designing and will be releasing this year file integrity monitoring tool. So right now, we can do this on small scale. We have already developed this functionality, but in the way we are doing this right now, we are just automating part of the process. So we are automating the detection of changes, but not helping you with the all follow-up. So not helping you with seeing if it's authorized modification, who changed it, and so on. Which of course it's helpful, but it still requires your attention. And everything what we do, we actually want to automate to the point that you will just set it up and just get information whenever something requires your attention. So with file integrity monitoring, which is coming June this year, we will be there with the product. So actually, that's all what I prepared in the slides. And now I'm waiting for your questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Andrzej, for your presentation. And as far as the questions are concerned, Ms. Laura has a question. You know, in that time where you shared your desktop and you were showing the panel, the QUALYS panel, I think Ms. Laura noticed that there was a tab with SAQ, and she has a question: is it possible to fill SAQ with QUALYS? So not only scanning, but also filling those SAQs.
Yes, so it was possible in the past, and with the new SAQ templates, we were forced by some requirements to stop this functionality, and we're right now working on re-enabling this in different platforms. So the challenge here is to give you more flexibility in filling those questionnaires and to maintain by QUALYS the evidence. Right? So once you will submit the questionnaire, we will be responsible for keeping it for you for the next 2 years, and we'll make sure that nobody can tamper with them, they can be changed, and so on. So right now we are in the transition period, so probably not something you wanted to hear, but just stay tuned, and I'm sure that the new solution will be welcomed by a lot of customers.
Right, great, thank you. I have a question, actually. It was very interesting to hear the differences between quarterly scans and penetration testing. We often get questions about that because people tend to confuse it. And my question is, there's a small or medium-sized merchant, small, medium-sized company need to perform a penetration testing as well?
Yeah, so they need to perform it, but it can be done either way, or they can use some shared resources. As said, all requirements of PCI DSS applies to all. But for most of the requirements, you have quite flexibility in the way how they would be completed, right? So yes, it needs to be done, but there is a lot of flexibility in the way that this would be done.
And I also think it's connected with the level of PCI compliance that a merchant or a company has to achieve. And coming back to those quarterly scans, so okay, you do them every 3 months, and is it true that you just enter the panel and you run the scan, so this can be operated by a person who does not have to have an extensive technological knowledge, right?
Yes, exactly. So our service is designed in a way that in the setup, you need to at least understand what is IP and what is the domain, right? So like really basic concept. But once you will set it up, actually everything else is run automatically. And of course, if you don't have vulnerabilities, right? If you will have vulnerabilities, if you will detect vulnerabilities, some level of technical knowledge is needed to fix the vulnerabilities. But I assume that this is either way forwarded to the specialized IT staff who will deal with that. But the same process is very common. But the process of ASV scan is run by compliance officer, who is a person with legal background, without IT background, with great success. Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you. That was really great to hear. I think that these are all of the questions that we had so far. So once again, thank you for your presentation. Any final word to our participants?
Yeah, I think that the message here, which was like hidden between the words, is that PCI DSS is a standard, it's a framework to force organization to better security. But actually, security is something that should be the goal of every running business, right? Like, whenever you do any business, you need to keep security, and IT security is part of that in mind. So thinking about PCI DSS requirements as a guidelines, but think further. Think about what is the value of organization and how you would like to protect it. Right?
All right, so with this being said, thank you all for participating, for joining us. If you have any other suggestions about what a webinar, what the next webinar could be about, let us know. If you have any more questions about scanning, then you can contact QUALYS, and have all a good day.
Have a good
Bye.
day.